Now then, people, welcome back to the Just Joe Football Show. Good evening to you all. I hope you are all doing well. Do me a solid, smash a like on the video, smash the like, peeps. Subscribe to the channel, get your comments in, and of course, hit that notification bell. I haven't had Evie on for a while, and then the comments on the last couple of videos have been like, where's Evie, where's Evie, where's Evie? So I was like, I need to get Evie on. And I'm aware that Evie is also flying to Egypt in a few days. So I thought I would get her on. Now, there wasn't anything sort of specific we were going to discuss. And then I said to Evie, what would you like to discuss? And the point we thought we would mull over, or that Evie came up with, was like the title says, right? Romantic hope or grim reality? Are we dreaming or dreading next season? You know what I mean? That's where we're at. Obviously, the last time we were promoted under Marcelo, the majority of us were quite optimistic. Like, I felt that, for me, I always felt we'd do well. Whereas now, under this manager, and it isn't any sort of slant on this manager, I just think it's a sense of like realism's come over me in terms of, right, okay, last time was romantic. We had Marcelo. This time, I'm okay with 17th. Give it me now. And why has the fan base's mindset shifted? Is it because we only had a short period in the Premier League? Is it because it isn't Bielsa and there isn't that romantic feel about it? I know Jack shouts at me all the time saying, no, I'm not going up just to be in a relegation battle. I want us to attack it. But my sort of mind is in a case of, well, if you could offer me 17th now, I'd take it. So, Evie, what is your opinion on the contrast of expectations going into it between last time and this?
I think things have seemed to dramatically changed over the last two seasons. Obviously, Burnley last time up, well, not last time up, but the last time when they won the championship, absolutely dominated it, ripped it apart, smashed attacking stats. Obviously, this time they've smashed defensive stats. And then, the same with Leicester last year. Obviously, we were right at there, like up with Leicester. But if you take out that little wobble that they had, in theory, they should have broken the points tally last season, with the team that they had, with the attacking style that they had, with the possession and the dominance that they had. And then all six of the teams going up over the last two seasons have looked woeful and pitiful. And I think that that's a lot scarier because obviously when we went up, having, Villa went up and they went, mid-table, then obviously they were circling near the bottom around the time that we were circling the drain. And, they improved their manager far quicker than we did, and we didn't. We know what we did, but Villa went from chasing, battling with us in the championship and staying up. So and now obviously they've had a European push, and then they're going to qualify this year again for some sort of European football. So that's 3 out of the last 4 years that they've qualified for Europe. So, they're living the dream that realistically we should have had. And that's not taking anything away from Villa. But that seems now, in the blink of an eye, far more difficult to achieve. Leicester just look pathetic. Ipswich, you could kind of understand it with Ipswich because even though obviously they got second, they also conceded a hell of a lot of goals. And there was a lot of, I know you make your own luck, but you've still got to have an element of luck. And how many times last season did we look at the table, like look at a match at 90 minutes and they were losing 1-0 and then look at it in the 93rd minute and they'd drawn or they'd managed to get 2 late goals and stuff last season. And that luck kind of ran out for them. And then they haven't really gained Premier League quality. They've probably overpaid for kind of championship quality. Obviously they got They got Jack Clark, didn't they?
Clark, but he hasn't featured much. And
But that's the thing is, Jack Clark isn't a proven Premier League player. I know he went to Spurs, but he didn't do it at Spurs. So he's a championship player. You know, they paid a lot of big money for players that might not even stay if they do get relegated. And certainly be on Premier League wages. I'm hoping for their own sakes that they put in some clauses like we had with a 50% reduction and things like that. But it is a lot scarier going up than it was when we went up 4 years ago. Well, no, 5 years ago now. And I think that's what makes it slightly less romantic this time, is that we've seen 6 teams who was so incredible in the championship look like, you know, they've gone from kind of lions to kittens in the space of a season. And that's, I mean, there's a wider discussion about how the gap seems to have been magnified over the last 2 seasons, especially, and it shows no signs of letting up. To the point where it's boring, because you look at the Premier League right now and there's no jeopardy in it for anybody. I know there's that kind of mid-table potential Europe places, but titles sewn up, bottom 3 are sewn up.
Do you know, on that as well, I think as well, this season has been exciting for the lesser teams, I guess, if you could call them that. But I do think like next season it'll revert back to the norm, right? So Man United will get better, Spurs will get better, Chelsea will be better. You would assume anyway, right? And then even that excitement that maybe the neutrals got watching Forest compete, watching Bournemouth compete, that might change next year, like, because it's like what Mickey P. Kerr says. I didn't agree with it all, but parts of it I did, and you know that. I tell you as well, and there's another conversation about it in terms of FFP for me. When I see it, PSR, FFP, whatever you call it these days, I didn't mind it because it meant that we're seeing lesser known teams being able to compete with the Man Uniteds, the Chelseas, and all this. But what it has then also done, those that are locked in the Premier League, it's almost like they're going to stay in the Premier League. Like you've mentioned, you know, the last couple of seasons, the 6 that have gone up have been woeful, have come straight back down. And there's almost like a mini league within the bottom 3 of the Premier League and the top 6 of the Championship. And it looks like that could easily break away, be its own 9-team league. Then you've got, do you know what I mean? It's, and you almost, do you think like the financial gaps are becoming like too big? I think as well, what also is a problem, which I don't think ever should have been pushed through, is the 5 sub thing. Because let's say we go up, not let's say we go up, sorry, we are going up. We're playing Manchester City. We're 1-0 up, or a team of note, we're 1-0 up. They have a much deeper squad to be able to bring on 5 subs, whereas we might be looking at Byram. And that's no disrespect at Byram.
Yeah.
We might be looking at Byram. We might be looking at, you know, play a Gulavogi, whereas they could look to some top-level players. And that also makes it more difficult as well, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I do get that. I do get that. And the reason where I like it, but you're always going to get with the top clubs that they have the money, the finances, the legal advice, and know how to work around the rules. You know, Chelsea selling the women's team to themselves, and hotels and this, that, and the other. So there's, no matter what rules you put in place in life, there's loopholes. That's you know, that's how lawyers make their money, is by working in the grey. And it's more about what happens off the pitch, and that shouldn't be the case. You know, like, we shouldn't. Did anybody know anything about finances?
No, not
until
before.
Kind of 10 years ago. Like, it wasn't, you know, we didn't know about finances until we got relegated, kind of thing. You know, it just wasn't something that fans were aware of. And it shouldn't be either. This should be a place where we're just talking about what happens on the pitch and occasionally some nice or controversial things that happen off the pitch that include the players, not the the chief financial officer or something like that, or I know you quite tongue-in-cheek would say about the fact that we've won the FFP market and the PSR market and things like that. And but it is a joke. We shouldn't have to be bothered about it, but you have to be, because it's now part of that footballing conversation. PSR is a massive, part of it. How many times, regardless of what you think of Man City as a club and whether they have the history and the fan, how many times are people always going to say, oh, but they've broken these financial rules, they've skirted around this. It should be about, well, Pep has got them over the years. I know it's obviously had a bit of a dip in form this year, but Pep has got them playing fantastic football and has made them just this juggernaut and practically unshakable for 7-8 seasons, to the point where you question whether Haaland's a robot and things like that. Like they're just so dominant and overpowering. But we always bring it back round to that financial discussion, and we shouldn't be. We shouldn't have to talk about these things. And we've spent more time talking about Leicester's finances and Southampton, the fact that in the same season that Southampton were bought for 100 million, Aston Villa sold Jack Grealish to Man City for 100 million. How can you buy a Premier League club for the same price that you can buy an individual? It just makes no sense. And obviously, they're going to be struggling because they've sacked 7 managers in the last 3 seasons. So financially they're going to be screwed, and they don't have the players to sell. Obviously they had Ward-Prowse, they had who was it that went from Southampton to, was it Chelsea, midfielder? I can't remember what his name was when they got relegated. Oh gosh, I can't remember.
Romeo Lavia.
That's the one, yeah. So all of these things, they don't have the players to sell anymore, so they're going to be quite screwed, because as well their most prominent players, like Walker Peters, he's going on a free, isn't he, at the end of the season?
He's out of contract. Yeah, I think he's out.
So they're going to be concerned going down. Why are we having these? Why do we have to have these conversations? That it's just so ridiculous. Even now, I don't agree with the type of ownership, but you look at Newcastle, for instance, like they've got to sell players in order to stay within the rule, the richest on paper club in the world, and they're not allowed to spend that money. And Newcastle has been on obviously not as bad as ours, but quite a similar journey to us, in the fact that they've got huge support and fan base, but they've been neglected and badly run and kind of left to go in the wilderness. And we took it to that Leeds degree where we went that one step further. But all of these teams that they can only compete every so often. And again,
as well, there's a lot to say for Villa as well, because I see a lot of comparisons between them as well. But the thing is with Villa, I mean, they've got very, very rich owners of Villa, and but they did manage to sell Jack Grealish for 100 million, and that was all pure profit. So imagine what that did for them in terms of then, they bought really well after that fact, and it's. It's tough, and obviously there's a massive financial boost the club will get, and we know we need that to stay, to be competitive, and we'll get the new ground, and it looks amazing, and there'll be a lot more corporate and all that, and it might change it. It probably will. Like they can say they're going to get acoustic specialists in and whatnot, but it is what it is. This is the way football's going. But I guess it's a question of, like, can we find joy next season in a relegation fight, or is it going to be, a miserable slog? Because if we were to ask Ipswich, Leicester, and Southampton fans, did you enjoy, the season you went up? Amazing. Comparable to this, they've been on the floor all season. Like Leicester, look, obviously I keep a close eye because of locks, but they're just done. Like they hate everything, the ownership, the manager, everything. But whereas if we compare that with the season they went up and they were talking about breaking the points record, and I guess the only way it's worth it is if you can stay up in it. Otherwise, we're like, because we are going to get beat. We are going to get beat a lot. We might go 3 games sometimes without getting 3 points, and that's been alien to us this season. Do you know what I mean? So, is it worth it, or is the journey better than the destination?
I mean, until we get comfortably upper mid-table, the journey is always going to be better than the destination. Yeah. And I was actually rewatching for the umpteenth time the Amazon documentary about last promotion, and just thinking, the heartbreak made it better. I'm not saying that any person in that, in Elland Road, in that derby game ever would want to admit it, but it did. It made it mean more, and it was gutting that obviously the fans weren't there, which is why this is probably, we've got to really enjoy it, because we're enjoying it for 2 promotions, which is why, the whole situation where everybody's calling for Farke to be sacked immediately. Like, we've just got promoted by, and whether you like his football or not is irrelevant, because Leicester fans were also complaining about Enzo's football last season. That's true. Any one of them would have taken Enzo back in a heartbeat halfway through this season. So, be careful what you wish for, because like the alternatives aren't always better. And, even taking my own personal dislike of this particular manager out of the equation, Mourinho's style of football and the league that he was managing in is completely different now. That football doesn't win, because the type of football that wins right now in the Premier League is a completely different style of football. So that style isn't, the nearest thing that gets any sort of success to that really is probably Forest, and they haven't won anything yet. They've got high up in the table, but they haven't won anything. And if everybody says, well, Farke's never going to win anything, well, right now Nuno hasn't won anything. But would you say that, Forest spent 28 years out of the Premier League? I would say that being in a promotion, in a European battle, is winning in their eyes, and we would say that it was winning. If we were in Forest's situation right now, we would 100% be saying, whoever the manager was winning, because we were up there and fighting again in where a lot of people feel that we should be, but we have to earn it. We can't just get there because we're Leeds United, because that doesn't work. At the end of the day, Leicester have won the Premier League. We haven't won the Premier League. We've won the First Division, and life didn't change and alter when it became the Premier League. It's always been the top division of, the football pyramid, but we haven't won it. And now Leicester are in potentially massive trouble when they come back down, and they've won a Premier League in the last, less than 10 years. And we haven't won anything. So it is going to be, or it could be one of those seasons. It could be Bielsa's first season in the Premier League. It could, we could shock everybody if we get recruitment right. Farke's football, in my opinion, I don't expect anybody to agree with me, but in my opinion, if you recruit right, Farke's football is worthy of Premier League. But it's all about recruitment, because actually him being quite pragmatic and then allowing the attackers to do their job is exactly what
I think it is about recruitment. Evie, I think you bang on the money. You know, you can have any sort of ideals, and you can have any type of formation and tactics, but you need to have the right personnel. Sorry, I'm just shooting over here because I've got Barca Inter on, and someone just said it's 3-3, and madness, mad game, great game by the way. Oh, Rafinha was it who scored as well? Give us some of that Champo money, because I think we get some money if they win the Champions League. I think maybe.
I think we get 2 lots. I'm sure there's a clause for Champions League and a clause for Ballon d'Or. I'm pretty sure. I'm sure Joe said it on one of his streams.
God, what a goal that is, by the way. Oh my God, that is just unbelievable. It's what he does, man. What a player. What a player. Wow. Sorry, Eva.
No, he's one of the few players that obviously, even though he's not ours anymore, I still... You never see anybody saying anything bad about him. Oh, he's gone, he's left Leeds, just ignore him. It's like, no, he was there was 2 lightning in a bottle moments, and they happened to coincide, Bielsa and Rafinha all in one kind of perfect package. You imagine if the board had have actually invested instead of getting Mateo Joseph and in that January transfer window, and imagine what could have happened.
Yeah. He was different gravy, wasn't he? What a player. What a player. Happiness is what you think about. No point dreading. There you go, Donna. Nice to see you. I haven't seen you for a bit. Right, next point, Eva. So, can we, because Luke is shouting at me all the time. Not Luke, sorry. Jack's shouting at me all the time because I'm like, no, we're going to be in a relegation battle. Let's finish 17th. And he's like, no, we get, like you said, could be a Rafinha. Can we, not a Rafinha, a Bielsa. See, I've got him on mind. Could be a Bielsa season and finish like 9th or whatever. So can we dare to dream of more than just survival, mid-table, or even beyond? Or is it settling for a period of time, lower, bottom end of the Premier League? Is that the new norm that we can expect for a few years? Like, where do you think we'll be at?
I think the behind the scenes at the club will probably be thinking that way, but us as fans, if we don't strive for more, what's the point of watching football? We might as well just all become accountants type of thing, because if we settle, yes, 17th given the last 2 seasons is an incredible achievement. But what if the last 2 seasons are the blip, and actually the previous kind of 3 or 4 seasons where at least one, if not all of the championship promotion teams stayed up? It could happen. If we recruit right, if we keep this momentum, just not let the toxic side of the small but loud amount of this fan base seep into everything, then, if we spur them on, like I know Bristol offered literally nothing on Monday, but that atmosphere was absolutely unreal. Like, it really was. And I think that because we're starting the season not in a global pandemic this time, the fans have no excuse to not be there giving 100%, and therefore the players will feed off of that. Whereas it's so difficult. If you just accept failure, then anything other than failure is seen as a good thing. Whereas if you strive for some form of perfection, then, perfection's subjective as well. What if perfect is 13th? What if that's the aim for the board and the people behind the scenes, is if Daniel Farke comes in, we recruit right, and we get 13th in our first season without buying 30,000 players like not Forest did, then maybe that is perfect. So
Where do you think we'll finish now before any of it starts?
I mean, if we're being honest, no matter how amazing this team is at this level, this team gets eaten alive in the Premier League, especially if, like you said, the probability that Man U get better, Man U, Man City improve, Liverpool will improve because they only got one player in, and they won the league. So the likelihood is they will have the finances, they'll have the impetus to go on and will buy further players. All of these teams will improve. Everton, with I don't know what they're going to do without the delights of Jack Harrison there every week, saving their ass.
Jack Harrison's signing there, I think.
Is he? Oh, thank God.
Yeah, apparently David Moyes is a big fan and likes attitude, etc. I didn't think he'd come back anyway. I think
no.
By the way, I actually don't mind him personally, but that's just my preference. I think he's a decent player, but hey.
I think that Rafinha is the exception to the rule that every player basically has happened after he left. Jack Harrison, Calvin Phillips, everybody essentially went steadily down. And Jack Harrison is no different for me. Bielsa made him the player that he was for us. And I will love him for his time here when he was giving it all for us. But he's an average player. And I think he's incredibly lucky to still be in the Premier League. I think he has ridden the coattails of Bielsa's management of him into getting a Premier League move, in all honesty. I think if he hadn't have played so well under Bielsa, nowhere would he still be in the Premier League now without being with us.
You could say that about everyone, all right. I was listening to
that's what I mean. Is other than Rafinha, every single player that we had in terms of and again we had a fairly aging squad. Pablo, Cooper, Ayling, Dallas, Click, all of those players, their careers. Yes, it coincided with them getting older as well, but their playing careers did go downhill after Bielsa left because of the fact that he got the best out of them. He created that magic moment. He turned them momentarily into wine, and then they were left on the side open too long, and they've turned fairly into vinegar.
I think for me right now, like I guess I'm just glad that we got to the Premier League. I've not even really started to think about what we can do next season. And I think a lot of that is due to the fact that right now I look at teams and I go, oh God, who are Leeds pulling in? Like, who are Leeds going to pull into a relegation battle? Like, if we look at the Premier League table now, just give me a second while I pull it up. And if we look at the 3 teams that are above the relegation zone, right, closest to it, you've got West Ham, which I look at. I'm just getting straight away. I go, we're not pulling them in. You've then got Spurs.
Why do you think? Because I think Bowen goes to Liverpool.
Okay.
And if Bowen goes to Liverpool, that's West Ham's goals dramatically halved.
Yeah. They do still have some other players, but yeah, I hear you. Okay. 1 second. I just so West Ham, Spurs, Everton. I don't think Everton will, to be honest. David Moyes, new stadium, all that. They're on the up. Man United, what's going to happen? Wolves, they've finished the season. I think they've won 5 on the spin.
Can I ask why you think Man United won't get pulled into it?
They're not going to be in a relegation battle. They just can't. They won't.
No, but
I would love it.
Right, if you remove the crap teams over the last 2 years and you add, say, Fulham, Bournemouth, and who else went up? Not Forest, back into that or us into that kind of, you say it was the season when we went down. We went down on 31 points. Southampton have barely broken double digits. You've got Leicester, what are they on? 18 points now? And then
18, 18.
And then you've got Ipswich. Are they on 20 or 21? I can't remember. But
21.
yeah. So we finished the season 10 points ahead of where the best out of the crap. If we say, well, for instance, I'm saying last 2 seasons are just a blip, and actually next season the tally to stay up is going to be far higher. What makes you think that Man U aren't going to be just as shit next season?
I think because they'll recruit. I think the manager, Ruben Amorim, isn't a bad manager. Obviously, it's not going well right now, but I think they'll recruit. I just think Man United won't be in a relegation battle. No way.
But you had a better season in for the bottom 3. They were in a relegation battle this season. You know, if you change that narrative of that next season isn't going to be potentially a team that gets 10 points, you know, you put those bottom 3 teams that they're getting, you know, 30 plus points. Man U's right in there with a relegation battle because that atmosphere, Harry Maguire has dragged them over the line in games.
You don't think Man United will be in a relegation battle?
Why not? They're in a if the bottom 3 weren't so shit this season, Man U in any other season were in a relegation battle.
Yeah,
as well with Spurs.
Same. Yeah, Tottenham the same. You're right. Fair enough. We'll see then, maybe.
So that's West Ham and Man U that we've dragged into a relegation battle.
Yeah.
So who else are we dragging in?
Yeah.
Let's drag Man City in. Come on.
Yeah, no, I just can't see it, man. It's going to be tough. That's where I'm at. But of course, if we have a good summer, we recruit well. I'll be like, right, let's go. You know, we can do this. Do you think they're right in keeping faith with Farke? I think you've already made your opinions. Pretty clear.
We've got to give him a chance. We've got to give him enough of a chance as well.
Yeah.
It all depends on whether the Premier League are going to be nice to Leeds or whether they're going to be like they did with, was it Ipswich? Where was it Ipswich or Wolves? Where they played like basically like the big 6 in the first 10 games of the season. So essentially they were just decimated from the start. So it really depends whether we can have a few good games sprinkled in between, because they're going to want us versus probably Liverpool for the first game of the season or something like that. You know, have the champions of the, you know, Premier League and champions of the Championship, depending obviously on Saturday's results. But if we get a few good games sprinkled in there and pick up some good points,
we've got to start well, haven't we?
We have to start well. But there is a good deal of luck involved in starting well. If you face fellow promotion people going up and last year's bottom 6, the likelihood is you'll get some points. If you face Newcastle, if you face not Forest, Liverpool, Man City, and Aston Villa in your first 5 or 6 games, you're going to be struggling for any points on the board there. So, I just...
Fixtures, recruitment.
And belief. You know, and belief, you know, essentially...
will play a massive part, won't it, Evie? For sure.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if they carry on, like I said, if they carry on that atmosphere that it has been the last couple of games into the kind of into next season, you know, if we see some good football during pre-season as well, you know, imagine if I know it's pre-season, it means literally nothing, and we all know like Bielsa's pre-seasons were terrible, but if we beat Man U in pre-season, imagine how pumped the players will be going into that season, knowing that theoretically they have enough to beat Man U. So, like, it gives everybody that belief.
Man U were getting relegated, Evie, you said.
Yeah, we're going to be the ones who relegate them, obviously. Look, nobody's too big because, everybody says Leeds are a massive club. Well, we were big enough to get relegated. So why aren't other teams big enough to get relegated? Especially when, Man U have recruited so poorly, overpaid for basically everybody in their squad. And if they don't win the Europa and don't get Champions League, they're screwed because they've got no money. Like, as in, I don't mean they've got no money. I'm not, but they've got no European money, which has massively bankrolled them over the last few seasons by just being jammy sods and winning the FA Cup, scraping Europa League, scraping Champions League when other teams have slipped up. They have been very lucky in the last few seasons by just miraculously ticking that European box. If they don't win it and they don't get Champions League football next year, there's going to be some issues, especially if they want to, have a publicly funded stadium rebuild and stuff.
Yeah. We'll see. I hope you're right. I mean, it'd be amazing, wouldn't it? I say it tongue in cheek. I can't see them actually being in one, but who knows? Yeah. So where's your head at, Evie? Is it going to be a sort like our Premier League campaign? Will it be a source of pride and excitement, or are we bracing for a season of anxiety and disappointment? Right now, I'm bracing myself for having to deal with so much negativity because we're going to lose a lot of football games. I hope I'm wrong, but I feel that that's where my head's at. I think why not? Why can't we stay up? But I'm buzzing we got there. Amazing. But it's also like now that like shit's about to get real. It's going to be tough. Like, where's your head at?
I think that we're in the best possible place out of any of the teams that have been promoted in the last 2 seasons or are going to be promoted alongside with us, because we've got a stable ownership, a filthy rich ownership, an American ownership, which when you look at the teams outside of the kind of Saudi-owned clubs, the most successful ones are the ones at the moment with American owners. So they know business and they have made things stable behind the scenes, which makes me more confident going up, because of the fact that we don't have to rebuild that infrastructure whilst recruiting, which is we basically didn't do either properly last time around. We didn't build the infrastructure, and we know that because as soon as Bielsa left, the infrastructure fell apart. So I don't think fans truly appreciated, not only, we all appreciate what he did on the pitch, but I don't think we appreciated what he did behind the scenes and how much he took on his shoulders, whereas the 49ers have people to spread that weight around. And I think they've been able to kind of get a Premier League how not to do it guide from Rads and Orta. And I don't think that they will, A, make the same mistakes, and B, they want to achieve, because it's the only way that they get back from their investment. So they will do and hire whomever they need to get that kind of next step, because they want to get their financial backing back. They want to get trophies. They're an outlet that want to show their dominance across multiple sports. So winning silverware is massive, which is why I think it's been so. I don't know whether you watched the Square Ball interview with Larry Nance, but they want silverware. So it's why everybody is still so, yes, we're promoted and we are absolutely extraordinarily over the moon, but the job isn't done yet, because we can win silverware and they'll want that. So it wouldn't surprise me if we spend wisely and not necessarily spend loads, and we don't do a Forest and get 20 players and throw them in and see who sticks. Because that's quite dangerous to do, not just for the financial aspect, but you've got to make those players gel. And I think you can get even more out of the team if you get a number 10, if you get a goalkeeper, if you get a number 9, if you get those 3 before we start the season, and have them in pre-season, I wouldn't be surprised if that allows Gruev, Ampadu, Rodon, whoever the wingers that we have still with us, makes them all up their game, because when you put better players with other players, everybody has to elevate their game. So we maybe don't need as many players as we originally thought, because, we've had one of the smallest squads, and yet we've absolutely ripped the league apart this year. I know it's a different setting, but that does say that if you have a tight-knit group, you're going to get the best out of those players as well, because everybody fights for one another. We saw that with the Bielsa team, is those players knew the system backwards and forwards. You could have put blindfolds on the players, and because, as Parker would say, scripted patterns of play, because they knew the script so damn well, they knew exactly where to be. And that's what I feel that we need. We don't need a dozen new players. We need 3, 4, possibly 5 high quality players, and that'll do us. And obviously get Harry Gray as striker, clearly.
Yeah, 100%. Sorry, Evie, I'm not being rude. I'm just absolutely knackered. Yeah, look, I hope we do well. I hope fans can stay engaged. I hope it don't get toxic. I want to enjoy it. Do you know what I mean? I think that first season under Bielsa was just elite, wasn't it? And then obviously it sort of went to shit, and it just got worse when he went, especially when you think we brought in Jesse. I mean, we had the moment against Brentford, obviously, on the final day. That was amazing. But then that other season was just absolute. Yeah, it was so bad. Jesse, Gracia, and Sam all in one season. Big Sam, it's not great. So hopefully, eventually Farker will go. But I'd love to see him, make us stable in the Premier League. I think that'd be something I would. Oh yeah, forget about Skubala as well. Skubala was in there as well.
Yeah, Scoobs with the 2-2 draw against Man U.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, mad. We'll see. Obviously you're going to Egypt on the weekend, so you're going to miss the game. Will you be in the air when?
No, I'll be in Manchester Airport watching Leeds on my phone.
Do you think we win that game and get the title?
I think so, yeah. I think that, obviously Darko JB can't play for them.
Yeah.
And
they're already down, aren't they? I
think they would need something like 20 goals to 0. So it's, if you think about it, last season, Huddersfield were in the exact same position. They could have stayed up, but they would have had to have beaten Ipswich about 15 goals to 0. And Ipswich scored immediately, and that was that. So, I remember I was on holiday last year for the last game of the season, but we already knew we were in the playoffs. It was just that last tiny shred of hope that, just kills you off. But I think we'll win. I mean, if I'm being super greedy, like, we could have beaten Bristol by more. And that's, it could have been
we could have
7-0, we've really, their goalkeeper, especially in the first few minutes of that second half when we had like 4 shots on goal, and it just wouldn't go in. I'm saying if we score 7 goals, then we've got 100 points and 100 goals. And like, that would just be something to absolutely, you could feel no nobody would have an argument to say sack Farke. I'm sorry, but if you'd have an argument, you've just got a personal agenda against him.
Yeah, exactly.
If the guy gets us 100 points and 100 goals, like it's you can't say anything. He's got the most goals in a season and the most points in a season. You know, I just, yeah, I would love that, and I would love that because it kind of a giant middle finger up to the people who wanted to have him sacked the 2 days after we got promotion. You know, just my little rant to people is nobody can say anything about those loan rats. If you want Farke out after he's achieved, because it's just business. It's just business, you know, like we want the best for Leeds. Well, they wanted the best for their career, and that wasn't staying in the Championship. So you can't be mad at Jack Harrison, Sinistera, Tyler Adams, Rasmus Christiansen, Aronson, Verber, all those people. If you are one of the people who want Farke out after he's done all of those things because it's just business,
100%.
then you can't say anything against those loan rats either.
No, you cannot, Evie. I agree. Do we stay up, Evie?
Yes.
Yeah, 17 for me. Give me it now. Is there anything? Oh, do you know what, Evie? You said you had some data.
We'll do that after the season. We'll do that after the season because there's a couple more. There's a couple more games.
Some receipts for me, I think, that she says she's gonna make me take.
It's nothing bad. It's all tongue in cheek. It's all tongue in cheek.
I hope so. Anyway, I hope so. Anyway, folks, thank you for watching this stream. I hope Evie has a lovely holiday and she can celebrate the title in Egypt.
I'll be slightly less milky white, just like slightly less ivory, slightly just more white.
Yeah, exactly. I'll be back tomorrow. I think it'll be the presser with the game being early Saturday. I think we'll have a presser tomorrow. White Rose Rivals at 6, and that'll be a lot tomorrow unless there's any major transfer news or anything happening. But yeah, smash me a like on the video. Make sure you go subscribe to Discourse of a Peacock. And I think that's it. Enjoy the rest of this game as well, by the way. And we'll see you in a bit. Bye-bye.